Hi, everyone, and welcome to Spirit Focus with Robert Painley. I think we've got it together today, and we keep figuring out new ways to do the show and to stream the show. So hopefully this is working and we're good. It looks like we're live all over. So thanks for joining again today on Spirit Focus with Robert Painley. We've got an interesting show today because I want to talk about some of the things that led to my turning off my gift for a while. And it was through some of these traumatic events as a child that I went through that kind of led me to the idea at that time that I needed to shut this down. So I'm going to go through those in a little bit. But before I do that, I had a lot of calls over the past week and people trying to figure out how to reach me. And it's very simple. Just go to rapainley@gmail.com is the easiest way to reach me. Again, it's rapainley@gmail.com. And you can reach me there. It's probably the easiest way. Or, send me a message through Instagram or something and I will get it as well. You can also reach me through spirit-focus.com and leave a message there. There's an email address there too that I will get and look at. So before we go any further, there are a few people that have come into my life in the last 6 months to a year that have just been amazing in helping me elevate my gift and help me in so many ways. So I want to thank Dr. Ruth Anderson and Terry Angel, Deb. The way that you guys continue to help out is amazing. And I just want to, again, thank you so much for everything that you do. Another person is Rosie Shapiro, and Rosie Shapiro is from TLC's Angels Among Us. And I'm actually doing an event with Rosie. She is hosting a Zoom event on September 13th at 7 p.m. It's an evening of hope and healing. And you can find, I posted the information on the EWN and the Enlightened World Network, so you can go ahead and try and find that event. So if you want to join us on that evening, please feel free to do so. She's going to feature me that night. So it's going to be a night of messages and kind of talking amongst ourselves about advice that we can give and things of that nature about healing the mind, body, soul, out there, so that from our experience and what she does as an amazing Reiki master and the mediumship that she uses. I mean, I'm surrounded by a bunch of wonderful mediums throughout town here. There's so many people that even joined us on the show, Michelle Barry and Tiffany and more that I can't think of off the top of my head, but they're just so amazing. And the love and support of the community has been wonderful. So thank you very much. And please feel free to join us. Go ahead and find us online. If you have any questions about the event or what's happening that evening, either check it out online at rosieshapiro.com or go ahead and email me and we'll get that information to you. Okay. Thank you very much. And so we'll start. I wrote down some of the childhood events that most influenced my life, and most of them I kind of put in the past because I don't like to remember them. They're very traumatic from the aspect of as a child not understanding what the gift was, how to use the gift, and what I was supposed to be doing with the gift. All I knew that it scared me on occasion. From a very young age, it was fine, but when they started to come and connect with me, and I started to get negative energy or negative spirits that I would encounter, then it just became too much to handle at points, or I thought so at the time, and I didn't know how to deal with it. One of those instances came when I was about 13 years old. And again, these people are still alive, so I'm not gonna, and I did get permission to use their names. So, but one of them was Scott, and Scott had a brother and his parents that lived in a home relatively close to where I grew up. And I was having a sleepover that night. I was probably, again, I was maybe 12, 13 years old. And one night, Scott and I were sleeping, and there was a 2-story home, and downstairs were huge living room, dining room, and a kitchen, and a guest bedroom and a pool room that was kind of a rec room at the time. We're talking about the 70s there, and so it was one of those areas that in the house that was huge. It was a huge room, but there was a couple of guest bed, kind of a couple of love seats in there that pulled out into guest beds. So we were going to be loud and talking all night, and his parents wanted to sleep, and there all of the other living quarters were upstairs, quite away from where we were, so that they wouldn't hear us talking, playing pool, eating food all night, and that kind of thing. So we went to bed, and we had a great night. And sometimes when I was at friends' houses, I would see other people, obviously, that I knew my friends did not see. And I ignored them for the most part. And they didn't really do anything. They let me know that they were there. They would, um, kind of acknowledge me in some ways. I would acknowledge them. So that they kind of knew, where they didn't really communicate with me or didn't try to interfere or didn't do things most of the time. So I was really surprised one evening when Scott and I went to bed. It was probably about midnight when we went to sleep, but it had just become daylight. So this is in Ohio in the middle of summer, and it gets daylight early. And we're sitting there, and across the whole back wall there was there were windows. There were a couple of sliding glass doors, but then there were some very small windows that were maybe 2 foot tall or so that went across the entire room, the length of the room. And they all had, if you remember from the 70s, if you don't, I don't know if they still exist anymore, but there were those pull shutters that when you pulled them, you pulled them down a little bit, and then you had to pull them, they would come down, and you had to pull them a little bit to get them to go back up. They were on a spindle. And so those were all pulled closed overnight, obviously, because we were trying to sleep and we didn't want the sunlight to come in first thing in the morning. But it got light, and it was about 6 o'clock. And I remember waking up first. I was on one, queen pull out, or whatever size it was, and Scott was on another one. And as I woke up in the morning, I kind of, you're kind of groggy, and I kind of looked up, and I saw the window shade, and I'll never forget, it had little kind of balls at the end. So it had a ball, and then it had a little triangle, and another ball, and a little triangle, another little ball, and it was that way all the way across the length of each one of these pull down shades. And I'll never forget just sitting there staring at it, and I watched one of the shades just go down and up and down, a little bit up and a little bit down and up all the way. And I was scared to death. There was no reason it should do that. It would never do it on its own, especially going up and down. It was hard enough to get them to go up when you wanted them to, let alone having this thing do multiple up and down motions. And I must have turned white because I was so frightened. I'll never forget. I kind of edged my way to the side of the bed, and there was maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 feet between the couches or something that were pulled out. And I remember reaching across and just grabbing Scott by the arm. And I didn't even say anything. All I did was he maybe just saw the look in my eyes. And all I did was just point ever so slightly up into the corner over there. And he followed my finger and it did it again. And it went up and down all the way, and flew up and started flipping around the spiral. Well, obviously he saw it too. So here's 2 13-year-old boys, terrified, and we were scared to death. Went flying out of that rec room and flying up the stairs and across the entire length of the house where his parents' room was, and busted to the door at like 6:30 in the morning and telling them what we saw and everything else, and didn't believe us. And it was horrific because they just thought we were dreaming. And it's like, we're trying to explain, there's no way we could dream the same thing at the same time. He saw it, I saw it, and we were both just petrified. And I refused to spend another night there because of that situation. I don't even know how to explain that, other than, they had Spirit has tried to contact me, and usually they were so respectful. But to have this happen, obviously, now I know that I'm not paying attention to them, and they up their ante to try and get me to pay attention and to understand that there's a message and I should be paying attention to it. But at the time, at that age, I didn't understand that, and it was just sheer fear, and I didn't know what to do with that. To me, I took it as, this is just frightening. Don't know what to do with it, and try to get to turn it off, and kept doing whatever I can. And Scott and I never talked about it again, because his parents didn't believe what we saw. There was no reason to talk about it. I mean, we kind of knew it between each other. We didn't talk about it to friends. I didn't mention it to my parents. But we both knew what happened. And when it would come over and we would get together with other friends and stuff in the house, occasionally, people would suggest something, well, let's sleep over here or do something of that nature. And we just never would. I don't think ever, Scott, I remember him having a sleepover again. And if he did, it was up in his room, up where closer to his parents. But I don't think he ever had another experience like that. I think it was there because of me, and that I wasn't getting the messages I was supposed to get, and they were trying to let me know. But somebody wanted to get a hold of me. And to this day, I still wonder occasionally who was trying to reach out and why they were trying to reach out. Again, one of those regrets of childhood is I didn't know what I could do or how to communicate and anything of that nature. So it was something that I now, and with this, doing what I do, I regret not having that ability. But I think doing everything that I do now, I think Spirit understands that that I wasn't ready or couldn't do what I was supposed to do, and went ahead and understands, that I wasn't ready, and moved the Spirit to someplace else for somebody that could actually help them. Or who knows, I may have helped the Spirit later on in life and didn't know it, that it was the same entity or same Spirit. But again, a missed opportunity for me, but one of those experiences that I've never forgotten. And you can tell by the way I'm telling the story, it's something that was really traumatic at the time. And to be that age and to have something that traumatic happen to you is frightening. One of those things I do tell my clients a lot, I go through a lot of PTSD, and I know because I suffered from it as a child. Having these types of experiences were traumatic, and having no one to talk to about it, having no support or no, kind of an emotional support or that just a way to bounce these ideas or what I'm feeling about this was bad. There is a reason that sometimes people who have this gift have issues. And this is one of those reasons why, because if you can't talk about it, if you do have trouble articulating it or finding someone who believes you, sometimes you're internalizing all of that negative emotion or negative experiences into something that can be difficult and challenging to live with. So if you are a light worker out there, or you are a person who may not have a gift but know someone who does, just understand that there are issues that light workers deal with sometimes that that other people who are not don't go through. It's like any other type of trauma, but it's a sixth sense trauma in the fact that it can't be seen, tasted, or talked about, or in some ways. But just be supportive and listen and try to understand. What may not be real to you is real to them, and that doesn't necessarily make them crazy or make them liars or make them less than. It just is they have a sense that you may not be able to understand, but it doesn't make you where you can't be empathetic to that individual. So sometimes there are people have issues, but many other times people who have this gift don't feel that they can be open and honest about it. It's only in the last few years, even myself. I mean, I was never open about my abilities and my gift when I worked in corporate America, because again, like I've said before on other shows, I didn't want to be looked at as that crazy guy who talks to dead people from a bunch of people who were reporting up to me. Them not knowing me, not talking about it was much more comfortable from a management perspective than to have that open in a way, because I knew things about people that worked for me that they never told me. I think it made me a better boss because I knew that they were having problems, or sometimes they knew about medical issues that they were having before they knew that they were having them. I couldn't talk about them or couldn't expressly discuss them with them. But when they came to me, I was already mentally prepared to have that discussion. And I think that's what made me a good manager. I think that's what helped me be empathetic toward the people that worked for me and with me, that I could understand their perspective or understand their problem, maybe in some instances better than they understood it themselves. And even though I wasn't going through that trauma of having whatever experience that was, I could be empathetic. I knew in advance I could kind of plan for, mentally how I wanted to address that situation. So There's a lot that you take away from just a kind of a simple story like this of how it can affect your life and things that happen later in life, and how you can address people and address certain aspects of your life, and make this gift work for you instead of sometimes against you. Okay, or feeling that it's working against you. Okay. Um, Another story that I want to talk about that was also influential, was something that happened to me as a child, but I didn't realize what was happening. It wasn't until many, many years later that I understood what was going on in the house. So before I tell the story, tonight there's no cocktail tonight. It's actually uh, apple cider vinegar, apple juice, water, and honey. Clean out your sinuses. So if you have allergies, it's something that's good for you. It's also good for sometimes digestive issues. So if you want, or if you don't, if you haven't had it, give it a try because it does work wonders. Again, so back to the story. Um, this one really has to do with a friend of mine named Jeff. And I too used to spend quite a bit of time at Jeff's house growing up. And his father was well known in town because of his profession. His mom was an artist, is an artist. And I went to their house and to sleep over. And it was one of these older homes in town. As though Scott's house was a very new, modern construction house. This house was a little bit older. And there was a lot, because sometimes with artistic people, there is another type of energy in a house. I can pick up on artistic energy when I walk into someone's house very easily. There's a sensibility there with artistic folk. Again, they use another side of the brain. The energy that they have is a lot different than people who are accountants, for example, or doctors, or people who are more right brain than left brain. So when I went to the house, it always had a great feeling because her energy was great and his energy was great. You know, he worked with animals and things all day, so his energy was fantastic. He had lots of animals around the house. So his energy in the house was good, with the exception of upstairs. So upstairs, and so Jeff's room was upstairs, and we would go up there to go to sleep at night. Most of the time, you know, we would do everything downstairs, and we only went upstairs to sleep. But again, like most houses in the day, the bathroom was down the hall. And so, you know, leaving Jeff's bedroom to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night was interesting sometimes, because I would encounter somebody, something in that upstairs hallway all the time, outside of one bedroom in particular. And it was disconcerting that enough that I didn't like to get up in the middle of the night. If I had to go to the restroom or something, I tried to avoid it if I possibly could, because it wasn't in his room and it didn't seem to be any place else in the house, but it was really thick in one particular section of this house. So I stayed at Jeff's house numerous times over the years, and there were times that the parents were gone, and you know they would have you know, his uncle come and stay, and you know he would have me stay over for a few days, and we'd have a great time. But always this issue in the evening, particularly with this particular entity, spirit. And I'll never forget that one night I got up to go to the bathroom, and the stairway, you know, because the stairs went up there, and there was a bedroom directly to the right. There was a bedroom directly ahead of you, and then there was a long hallway that had a couple of bedrooms and another bedroom at the end of the hall. So Jeff's bedroom was down the hall a little bit, but as you walked toward the bathroom, which was kind of in the middle of the hallway, while I was going to the bathroom, there was a shadow figure, which I don't like, because I quite frankly, I'd rather see somebody standing there that was recognizable, as opposed to, you know, kind of something that looks like a puff of smoke that's standing there and you don't know who or what it is. And this would stand right by that stairway, the top of the stairs there. And I remember getting up one night to go to the bathroom and staring at this, you know how you try and focus your eyes at night. I was just sitting there trying to focus and focus and focus. And it didn't move. It didn't do anything. It was just there. And I remember kind of as I made a move toward, and it just kind of stood there looking at it this particular night. And as I was doing that, it didn't move anywhere. But as I got closer to that room where I always felt something, it started to move that direction. Like I was going to that room, and I didn't want to go there. But I also felt like I was being drawn to that room, and I never went. I just refused to go. So many years later, I had an encounter where uh, Jeff married, has children, left home years and years ago, and went to the house just to visit his parents on a trip up to Ohio. And as I stopped in the house, one of the things that happened was I sat down and I never told them what I did when I was a child, but now that I told them what, I told them what I was doing and the people that I was working with and a couple of stories, they seemed fascinated by it. And I had to tell them too, I was like, look, when I was a kid in this house, there was always something here. There was always, there's always something in this house. And, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back upstairs now with hindsight behind me and with, and the confidence now of having years of doing this professionally, to go back into this house to see what this was and if it's still there or if it was just while I was there. So she proceeded to tell me about a story that happened to her with one of her friends the day that one of her friends passed, and cupboards opening and dishes crashing to the ground and all this kind of stuff. So she's a firm believer in the spiritual realm, shall we say? Because I like to feel people out a little bit and see if they understand what I do a little bit. She was fully on board with that belief system. So I said, just kind of hang out here. Let me go up by myself. I just want to see if I can get this energy. And sure enough, I walk upstairs and I'm drawn to that same bedroom. And I get to that bedroom and I didn't know what to do. It was something was calling me into this room. And so I went in there and I found out at that point that I really needed to investigate this room. So I walked in, and in one side of the room, there was this little chair sitting next to the bed on the far side of the room. And I just got this feeling of energy being there. And I wasn't sure why, but then I noticed off to the other side of the room that there was a little door there. One of these little, it kind of followed the roof line. So it was kind of angled a little bit and maybe 4 foot tall door. And I asked her if they wouldn't mind that I went through this door, which apparently led to an attic. Again, as a kid, that room scared me, so I never went into this room. I didn't know what was in there, and didn't know that actually there was an attic on on through this little door. And I walked through, and I opened up the door, and my friend's mom came upstairs, and she said, "Look, there's a light in there. Let me turn it on for you." I said, "Great, thank you." She flipped it on, and off in the distance was everything was neatly packed and everything else, except for what by itself over on the far side, there was a rocking chair. And this rocking chair did not have a seat in it left. There was no seat there, and there was no seat on the back. It had to be, kind of reupholstered. But I was looking at this thing and got a feeling of, they hear this rock. This chair rocks by itself. Someone sits here every night and it rocks back and forth. And they also move from that location into the bedroom and sit in this chair. So I just proceeded to tell my friend's mom, "Hey, look, do you ever hear this rocking? Because you'd have to hear noises coming from here because I can hear it so well." She goes, "It's been happening for years, ever since, when you guys were kids. I mean, this has been going on. We just kind of make jokes about it. But we always thought there was a breeze or something." I was like, "No, this is," and I went through several generations of who this was, and they'd actually gotten the chair. It was as an heirloom handed down through the family for years, and that they just stuck up into the attic with the hopes of someday reupholstering it and getting it taken care of, but they never did. And it would just rock by itself. And sometimes she said she would go in there and she was kind of comfortable in that attic space. And even though they made fun of this for years, they finally understood who it was and what it was. And I was able to confirm, put the connection together of how many generations back and who this belonged to. And this is who sits in this chair and what this gentleman looks like. So they knew, and it gave them kind of a peace of mind, and now kind of talk to this chair with a little bit more reverence and respect of who this family member is, who is basically just there to watch over the family. And it crossed over completely, not a ghost, but just comes and pops in. This was his chair. Again, it was a family heirloom. It was a couple 100 years old, or 180 years old, and it was just something he was comfortable with. And this is where he would come and visit the family. His uh, grandchildren and great grandchildren in this location, and he would move from there and sit in the corner. But come to find out that she was uncomfortable in that room, that nobody ever really went into that room ever. But at least now they know who and what it was. And it was great for me to finally have that confirmation after so many years of who this was and what they were, and not being afraid of it anymore. So I like going into some of those places where I went as a kid and I was frightened, and getting, as Paul Harvey used to say, the rest of the story, going in there and finding out I had these experiences, and now the rest of the story is, here's the punchline. And it's good for me because it confirms a lot of what I felt as a child, but it also allows me to address those things that were frightening as a kid and kind of close a chapter, close another door. And every time I do something like that, it makes me feel better as a person. It makes me feel, he was already crossed, he didn't need to be moved over, but it was just an acknowledgement for this particular spirit that he was remembered in some capacity, and that his property was treated with respect, and that his story did not end with him. So that when this is passed down, the family knew who this was, what this was, and why it was important to the family. And there is a long Civil War history with this family. They did have people that fought in the Civil War, very famous people that you would know. This particular chair didn't belong to that individual, but it was related to him through a family connection. So all of those types of things were just, I'm kind of Nancy Drew in a way when I go to these types of houses. I love to find out the mystery of it all, the mystery of what's there, why it's there, why they're bothering people, why they want to be known, why they're causing issues, why they're being noisy or rambunctious, or and a lot of times it is to be remembered that people aren't remembering them, and remember, sometimes it's important to the spirit, but sometimes it's important for the family history as well, that people are remembered and what they did is remembered, and it's important to pass some of that stuff on. So the moral kind of this story is, if you have a family history, whatever that family history is, and we all do, some of us who don't know, if you were adopted, or maybe your parents died young, when you were younger, and you didn't get all that history, do try and find some of that out, because, I think it's important. People do, the spirits that have crossed do like to be remembered. They, pray for them, pray for their soul's journey. It's all lovely and wonderful to do. Doesn't cost you anything. And it's just a very nice thing to do. Imagine yourself when you pass from this plane, how you would like to be remembered, and how you would want people to maybe respect your memory in some way, and have that same reverence for people who passed already, and just wish them well on their spiritual journey. Okay, perfect. I don't know, and I apologize last week. One thing that I wanted to say was I asked people to go ahead and submit questions, and I saw last week that some people had submitted them, but there are several platforms here, and I can only see one platform at a time. So I do apologize that I may not be on the platform you are on. So I'm going to try and pull it up now. Hi, Julie. Nice to see you. And see what else is. Let me turn this off here and see if anybody else has any questions at the moment. Ms. Ward, how are you? Good to see you. See if there's anybody else. Carol Ann, hi, nice to see you as well. I think my husband Mark, I think, is on another channel. So if a question comes up or something, we'll try to answer it. But while we're here, I did reach out to someone last week who did have a question, and I wasn't on that particular channel, so I didn't see it, but I did respond to them. So if you have a question, go ahead and submit it, and I'll go ahead. If I don't see it now and do it while we're doing the show, I will go ahead and do it at another time. One of the things, I think one of the worst childhood experiences I had is one that I've never told anybody. And here I am telling to you. So one of the funny things about growing up and having these experiences, funny now in retrospect, was not being believed. When people are told that they have, an imaginary friend, or, a child tells a parent that there's a ghost or there's somebody under the bed, or something. Again, a lot of times those are our dreams, our fears, our, or things of this nature. But there are times when these things are real. And, there are questions. If you have questions about that, how do you tell the difference between a dream and an actual spirit encounter? Let me know. Happy to talk about all those types of things, because I can tell the difference. Obviously, doing what I do, I can see people very clearly. As much as, I see a person on the street is how I see spirit. Not all the time, but if they present themselves that way, that's how I'll see them. And there was one morning, again, I was on my little baby brother, baby brother's a year and a half younger than mine. It was Brian was slept underneath. He slept on the bottom bunk. I slept at the top bunk. My brother Rick was on the other side of the room, and it was in a bed. And I remember one night we had my parents going out. It was middle of winter, December or something, for the holidays, and my mom and dad were going out to a holiday event. It didn't happen often with 4 children, but they did go out this particular evening and had a babysitter come over. And she was lovely. It was the first time that she came over to babysit for us. And she was just a nice young high school girl who came over. I was probably, again, at this time, maybe 10, 11 years old when this happened. And I'll never forget, she made cookies and did everything and kind of put us to bed in the evening. So we're laying in bed, and my little brother and I, as usual, kind of chatting behind there was a where the bed went against the wall, there was always a little crack there, maybe 2 or 3, 4 inches wide. And my brother and I would talk back and forth there for a while when we went to bed at night. And this particular night, we were all tired. We went to bed, and so I'm laying on the top bunk and I'm trying to go to sleep. And I'll never forget the sensation that I was in danger. And it's, you get that sensation of fight or flight sometimes. And it's kind of, sometimes you could just be walking down the street, you get the sensation, and you just, particularly if you're intuitive at all, or you're an empath or something, you will get this feeling that's so strong that you have to take an action of some sort. And for whatever reason, I knew I had to roll over and look. And just, because I flipped over and I saw this little old lady who normally little old ladies don't frighten me. This one frightened me. She glowed. And I don't usually get spirits that glow. Oddly enough, I had one about a week and a half ago with a client who was having some real issues with something that was dark. And this woman appeared in a mirror in my house to let me know that she was not particularly pleased on what I was going to go to do. But in this instance, it was relatively the same thing. She was a small, little old lady. She was kind of hunched over. And I didn't know at the time that sometimes spirits can take a form. One that could either fool you and draw you in, or one that's meant to scare you, so to make you back off. And now I get it. Then obviously I had no idea. But she appeared in this way, and she was frightening because she glowed in a way that I'd never seen a spirit glow before. It was just not a good glow. It was, just this energy radiating from her that was just an energy that I can't explain. Even though it was a kind of a white light, it just wasn't a good energy surrounding it. And again, so it wasn't really a white light. It's just how it was meant to scare. It was kind of like a lantern. It was just kind of meant to scare. And I never forget, I screamed, jumped off the top of the bunk. I didn't even use the ladder to get down. I think I jumped off the top of the bunk, just kind of slid down, got up, flew by whatever this was, down the hallway, through the kitchen, out the living room door. This is 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I'm in my pajamas. There's maybe 6 inches of snow on the ground. I have no socks on, no shoes on, no jacket on, nothing. I flew out the door, and here's the surprise, babysitter at the house who tries now. She's got 3 kids in the house, and me, who's running, from her perspective, God knows where, trying to just running out of the house, and she's, doesn't know what to do with that. So she puts on her jacket real quick and throws on some shoes, and she could see my footprints in the snow as I ran about 300 yards from my parents' house over to our next door neighbors, and I'm pounding on the front door. And the woman opens the door, my next door neighbor, the mother of the house, opens the door, and not a word. I just flew into the house and just kind of just ran to the farthest point of their house and just kind of stood there, just completely freaked out about what I'd just seen. And so the neighbor came back and she's trying to calm me down. I'm kind of hyperventilating. I don't know what to do. My feet are raw from running in the snow for for this 300 yards. I don't have a jacket on. I'm cold. I tried to explain in some way what I saw. And the best thing that she got as a neighbor was, that this was, I had a really bad dream, but she was going to comfort me, and she stayed with me, thankfully. So she told the babysitter that followed me to the house that she'd watch me until my parents came home. So the babysitter went back to the house, and I stayed with this family for the next hour or so. And parents got home, and she got there, and the babysitter was frantic and apologetic and everything, trying to say what had happened and what happened to one of the children that she lost custody of while in her care. And so I'll never forget, my parents were mad. And they marched across all that land that was just snow covered to come and find out. And pounded, did pound at the door. They knocked at the door, and the neighbor answered the door and came in. And my parents came straight back to me in the room and said, what happened? And I told them to explain what happened. And instead of being a little empathetic with what I'd gone through, they were more embarrassed, I think, was, I guess, the overall aspect that I had done this. They thought maybe it was a reflection on them somehow, that I had, run out of the house and freaked out in the middle of night for a child, while we were all supposed to be asleep, and came to their home. And again, it was one of those times that I didn't feel believed and didn't feel trusted for what the experiences that I were having was. And I will never forget that the trauma that I went through, again, knowing what I saw, knowing what it was, and not being believed, and knowing that I was going to have to suffer that trauma again and again and again because I wasn't believed. I don't know what my parents could have done at that point. Again, coming to find out years later that my mom had the gift, whether she could have or knew how to do anything about figuring out who this or what this was that was bothering me. But it was at that point, I think, through this particular night, that I really wanted to shut it down. It's like, I can never see this again. Not being believed, not being trusted, all of those feelings that went along with it as a child, being rejected, maybe, in a way by your parents because of something that you saw, felt, or feel, or, saw or felt, was challenging and difficult. And I didn't know what to do with that. So I just wanted it gone. I thought, again, this is a curse. I don't want this. Get this away from me. And after that event, I really wasn't bothered for a little while. It took another while before I was actually bothered. I really prayed on it. I come from a Catholic family. I went to church every weekend. We had catechism classes. I was an altar boy. I spent a lot of time in church at that point because I felt safe there. And this is why I felt so safe in that environment. So I think if I have to point to an event that probably led to my trying to turn this off, as I continue to get older, I really keep going back to this event because it really was so traumatic for a child to go through. Again, I think there's a show like this one where parents can watch it and maybe help talk to their children, or just contact me, and I'm happy to talk to children. I do it all the time. I talk with a lot of burgeoning psychics and mediums, or children who have gifts, all the time, because I don't want anybody to ever experience that again. And I can put it into context for the adult, because I understand it now from my perspective, and I can put it in the context of the child and talk to the child about the trauma that they're going through, because now I understand that much better. So one of the things that I want to talk to is, okay, so I got a question. So we'll go ahead. Elida, I think that's how you pronounce your name, asks, why do some dead people show up in photographs? Great question. So first of all, we have to kind of differentiate between do they, don't they, how do they, because there were photography tricks that were done in the 19th century, early 20th century, and maybe even still to this day, where they put loved ones in pictures. So if we put away the trickery or the photography aspect of this, that there was something, and a lot of times back in the 19th century, they would put the person in the photograph because it was a family photograph and somebody may have died, and it was kind of a way of getting them in the family shot, as it were, because you don't take photographs like you do today. I mean, I could take 200 photographs in a day just with my phone. But it was it was a special event then. You got dressed for it. You did certain things to get the family photographed. And sometimes they would put these images in and embed an image in there so that the family could be quote unquote together in a particular way. And also spiritualism at that point was also huge, from like the 1840s, 50s, 60s into the late 1800s and early 20th century. That the spiritualism movement was huge. That's where you get things out of that, like Lilydale and in this country and other places. So let's get that portion of it away. I have video. You could go online and see ghosts that we've captured on camera or things that I've captured on camera. The reason that you're able to capture that is because it's energy. And what the camera is actually picking up when it's taking a picture is not your image per se, but it's a pixelated version of light reflecting off of something. So when you have energy that is formed in some way, the camera is picking up that energy, and it is kind of imprinting onto that image in a pixelated way based on light waves, right? So how you get color, how you get that type of reflection. Obviously, when you take something that has mass, or you take a picture of energy that's different or light that is different, if there's something moving, you will pick up something that can be, sometimes look like a person. Sometimes it is a spirit. Sometimes not. Sometimes it can just be the eye, and the human mind likes to make forms out of things. So there's a lot of times that people look at clouds and they see a heart, or they see an angel, or they see something. Sometimes it is a sign. A lot of times the human mind wants to make sense of things in the world, and the human mind will try to calculate and put meaning to things that may not have actual meaning to it. So if you take all of that aside, and again, even as a medium, I'm a skeptic myself. I like to look for the scientific reasoning behind something. I like to look for what it is, and then maybe move my way toward the spiritual rationale for something. So in this case, some people will show up in photographs just to let people know that they're still around. I've had them just come in, like at weddings or at christenings, even at funerals. That people have taken pictures at where they've dumped ashes in the sea or something, and an image will show an actual spirit being present at that moment. So they show up just to let them know that they're still part of our lives. Sometimes if it's a spirit that's not known to us, they can show up because you're not paying attention to them. They may be turning off lights and doing things, or moving things in the house, or taking your car keys and moving them around, and they're not where you actually left them. They may be giving you all these signs, but you're just not paying attention to them. And then finally, when you see something in a photograph, you have to give credence to what may be there. So there could be why do some dead people show up in photographs? It could be for numerous reasons. One, to let them know that your loved ones are still around, to let you know that you have somebody that's trying to communicate with you, to let you know that you're not alone. And sometimes you don't have to fear it. Sometimes it's not a great image that shows up in some photographs, and that you need to be aware of it. So it's hard to give a one-size-fits-all answer to that type of a question. It really depends. If somebody does show up in a photograph, if you don't know who it is, this is where you would maybe want to contact a medium to try and find out, hey, actually I had that happen today. Somebody sent me 8 photographs to look at, to see what I saw there. I mean, I can put myself in places and that sort of thing that a lot of people can't do, but the sense and the feeling that I get, and see if you know what that is. Contact the medium, see if they can put you in contact. That takes a lot of energy to do that. So them doing that, there may be a reason why they're trying to connect with you in some way. So take it seriously for what it is. It's not, if it's particularly if it's not a parlor trick in some capacity, or if it's not somebody doing it just to make a funny video or a funny picture of some sort. Do try and figure out who it is, because sometimes those messages can be important, not only for the person who's trying to give the message, but they could be trying to give you an important message, or somebody in your family an important message, and that's why they're try so hard to get in contact with you. Okay, so thanks. I appreciate the question. Let's see how much time we have here. It looks like we are, oh, got time for another story. That's great. So, um, which one do I want to go to? Because I've only got time for one more. Visiting, playing. Okay, I'm going to go here. And there are two stories. I want to know if I'm going to get to both of them, but one story has to do with a babysitting gig that I did when I was young. I think it was the last time I babysat, because it was such a traumatic experience. So that one was tough. And I also had an old house. I grew up in an area of Ohio that was known for its Underground Railroad activity. There was a college town next to where I grew up, Hiram, and there's Hiram College there. That's where President Garfield is from. Was the president of that college before he went on to be president of the United States. But so there's a lot of this history in that area, and there was one particular home that I'm going to talk about now. I'll tell that babysitting story another time. And that story of this home was frightening from the aspect of, when I get energy, and particularly as a child, I didn't know whether it was good energy or bad energy. I just perceived it as frightening. Now it's very easy to discern, good energy, bad energy, male, female. Then it was just, something's happening and I have to be aware of it. So at this particular time, I had a friend who had a home, and I still think it's in private hands in town, that was part of the Underground Railroad system. And if you know some of these old houses in Ohio, a lot of them are old farmhouses, and a lot of them have root cellars, and a lot of them have basements, and a lot of them have barns. Some of them were small farms, some of them were larger farms. And in this particular area, this was an old house that had been converted from a commercial use to a home. And I had a friend who lived there, and they had a farm that was surrounding this area. And when I would go over to visit, it was just kind of just to go over the plan. I never spent the night there. But I would go, and sometimes, again, when you have a gift of mediumship, or or an empath, or you get any type of energy at all, sometimes you're just drawn to places. You don't know why, but you're just drawn. And you have to, sometimes I have to go places. I have to do something. I have to, there's something that you're drawn to do, or you're being told to do, and you don't know that sixth sense aspect of doing this type of work, that you don't know exactly what to do with it sometimes. And in this particular case, walking around this house and playing outside, there was this little kind of underground, like a root cellar, or in Ohio, we also had areas that had these double doors that opened up, where if you were having a tornado, you would get into this locked area, so that if the house blew away, you're still safe in this area. And it had one of those on the side of the house. It was kind of maybe 2 foot off the ground, but it had these double doors that swung open this way, so you could crawl down into the root cellar. So I don't know what they used it for. I have no idea. But I'll never forget being so drawn to this. And this is apparently the area where, when they were trying to smuggle people along into the Underground Railroad, this is where they were hidden. This I came to find out years later through the family history. So, but at the time as a child, didn't know what any of that meant, really. It's you have kind of a Huckleberry Finn aspect of life. And I didn't understand. I wasn't able to contextualize the Civil War, what it meant, or slavery, or movement of slaves from south to the north through Ohio up through into Canada. None of that made sense, at this age. So we were playing, and I was going around the house, and we play and stuff. But I was always drawn to this, and I can't figure out why. I'll never forget one evening that I went over to the house. And instead of going straight up to the door, there was a reason I was being called to just kind of go to the side of the house. And I'll never forget walking over there, and just kind of went around the side of the house, but apprehensively, because I'm being drawn there. And I'll never forget just standing in front of that door and looking down at it and getting the sense that there's so much energy and so much uh, this fear and anger and just getting all this. And I'm starting to get goosebumps as I do when I start to connect with energy. And as I get all these goosebumps and I start to like almost feel this emotion well up through me, the double doors that were there started to shake violently, just shaking, 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 shaking. And it was like they were trying to open up, but it was, it had two handles up there that were locked. There was a kind of a chain and a lock on it that kept it locked up. And so nobody could get in there in the middle of the night or to keep it, whatever they had there, safe. But it started to shake so violently. So it was locked up, but somebody had to be doing it from the bottom. There was nobody standing next to me. And it was just shaking and shaking and shaking. And I went to go scream, and it's one of the screams where nothing comes out. You just, it's just that you want to scream, you want to make noise, but you can't. And I felt like I was rooted there. I could not move. And it was the most disconcerting feeling I think I've ever had in my life. I've had other traumatic stories, obviously, from my childhood, but this is one that I couldn't get away from. And I couldn't move. I was stuck there. And I felt that any second this thing was going to I felt like it was going to get opened up, and this thing was going to open and swallow me in some way, or that I was going to get sucked into this, or didn't understand anything. It was just such a unique and odd feeling. And so I stood there, and it stopped, and it just stopped. It wasn't like a gradual thing; it just stopped. It may have done that. It seemed like forever, but it probably didn't do it for more than maybe 15, 20 seconds. And I remember trying to call. I remember not being able to move. And the only thing that I could think to do at that point was to try to look away, but I felt like I couldn't even look away. There was just drawn. I can't explain it. And just, it was so quiet, and it felt like, no birds were singing, nothing was going on. And again, this is the middle of farm country, so there's farms all around this house, just land and planted, corn and potatoes and things of this nature. And nothing, dead silence. And that's disconcerting enough in an area where you're used to hearing animals and birds chirp and all dogs barking and all kinds of stuff. There was nothing. And it felt like time stopped. And I will never forget the feeling of it happening again, but it was just two violent shakes where it tried to open and it could not break the chain that was there. And all of a sudden it was like I was released, and I never flew out of a place so fast in all my life to run back up onto the front porch of this house. And we'll never forget that. It's one of those things I don't think I've ever told that story publicly to anybody, because it's not one of those ones. It's when I even retell it now. It's one of those stories that takes me back to that time and the complete fear that I had at that moment by having that experience. So I'm telling you these stories because, again, I want to tell people how frightening it can be when you don't have the acceptance, when you don't have the a buyer or anybody to talk to about this gift. The gift comes with a price. It comes with the price of trying to understand what it is, and it makes it so much easier if you have people that you could talk to, or there's some empathy somewhere along the way. So if you have anybody in the situation, please tell them to try and find help. Contact me. Happy to talk with anybody, anytime, to help them on their journey. There are other people on this network. Reach out to anyone just to try and find that type of help that you need or that you want, or just somebody, an ear to talk to, to try and work through some of it, because it can be very traumatizing, as it was for me. I managed to work through it, but you can understand now from some of these stories that I do tell, that these stories have made me the way that I am, and my mission to make people comfortable in their own homes or in their businesses or on the land that they live on comes from these experiences and how traumatic it was for me. I don't want anybody else to have to live through them, particularly if they don't have the gift and aren't able to see, feel, sense, or hear in some way what is going on. And it's a complete mystery to them. That's even more terrifying. At least I kind of knew what was going on and why it was going on, or what it was. But when you have absolutely no knowledge, it can be even more frightening. So if you have anybody that is suffering from this in any way, that doesn't have a gift, tell them to reach out to find somebody who can. reach out to me again, rapainley at gmail.com. You can reach me there, or just reach me through any way that you possibly can. I'm all over, I'm on the internet. I'm on, on Robert Painley Medium and on Facebook. So just reach out, and I'll try and help in any way that I can. Reach out to the Enlightened World Network. Anyone that is broadcasting on these networks, on Enlightened Living or Enlightened World Network, can also help find you the resources that you need. Or also go to a local spiritual shop. We have a couple great ones here in town. The Love and Light Spiritual Emporium is here. We've got Mystic Sisters here in town, and a couple others. And I know that they recommend people all the time to find that type of help. So do try and do that if you can. Okay, and with that, I think we're going to check to see if there's any messages here at all before I leave this particular platform. And let's see. Okay, it looks like Elida, I think what I'll do is to hit you offline, and we'll have that discussion, because I think there's more there to the story than I can tell you on air here, and so we can dive into that. So again, please feel free. I got a lot of time now between now and September 13th, but to tune in to log on to rosashapiro.com, come to the event, An Evening with Rosa Shapiro, An Evening of Hope and Healing. And I look forward to having that platform to tell more stories and talk about ways that we can help heal our mind, body, and soul, as well as just have some fun. And Rosie is absolutely phenomenal. If you haven't found Rosie before online, go ahead and pull her up at rosashapiro.com. Pull her up on the internet, on YouTube, watch some of her old shows so that you can get a feeling for who she is as a person and what she does and how well she does it. And I look forward to seeing you there. So feel free to get on and come to the event on September 13th. Otherwise, we will see you here on Tuesday of next week at 7 o'clock. And hopefully next week we will have the story finally of a haunting from a first-person account, what this gentleman lived with. Joseph is an amazing individual, but he's had some trauma in his life that he's had to work through with some of these spirits in his home. And I think he'll be a good resource for anybody to try and help explain how to maybe deal with this type of trauma in your life. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful week. Blessings to everyone, and we will see you next week on the Enlightened World Network. Thanks. Have a great evening.